Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. I know, everybody's losing their minds over Lindsay Clancy and the case about the death of 3 children and then the argument over postpartum psychosis and whether Lindsay Clancy was insane when she killed her 3 kids. It's not a whodunit. It's not a whodunit. It's a whydunit. And quick note, for those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. It does me a huge solid when you hit the subscribe button. And if you haven't, could you do it? It's right there. It's free and it's fun. And I really do appreciate it. And for those of you who have joined, thank you for being members. More stuff coming ahead and new merch in the fall as well. There are a lot of women who are taking to TikTok and holding their babies and crying.
I am completely overwhelmed trying to take care of the kids. I'm drowning every day. I feel guilty that I'm spending my family's money and not making any. I feel like I spend way too much. She wrote that, right?
Correct.
Saying that they are in solidarity with Lindsay Clancy. Now, obviously, to me, that means you're suffering from some postpartum issues. You have your baby there. You have this feeling, and you need to express it to let people know this is real, and please understand it. Please acknowledge. And I think that's fair. I think some people are freaking out about it. Everybody needs to fly their own flag, y'all. And if you feel strongly about something, it's fair to let others know about it. In your face, not so much. Proselytizing, not so crazy. But I think this is a really fascinating debate that everybody's having. And it is polarizing. I mean, polarizing. I really hope that we can all give each other a little bit more grace. And in this episode, you're really going to understand how and why. And actually, once I lay out a couple things for you in a minute, I think you're going to see the grace kind of developing that maybe you didn't see before of the other side, whatever your other side is. And can we speak for just a hot minute before I get into this whole other issue about Patrick? Please, Jesus and any other God you pray to, please stop saying that Patrick did it. Please. That's fucking crazy. If you follow the testimony, if you follow the evidence, if you've even looked at some of the digital evidence, Patrick didn't do this. For those of you who say, but he got married just a couple days after the kids died. No, he didn't. So please stop. That's like the Proberger shit. We do not need people who say, but Brian Koberger's innocent, even when he told us he wasn't. Ugh. Just please, it is so painful to add salt into a festering wound. And here's what I wish would happen. Patrick's 911 call was so gutturally painful, like a wounded animal. And not the one you can smell a rat on that one, sounds like acting. No, not like that. But Patrick, as my understanding, made a request to the court to please suppress that for privacy reasons. I guess it's so horrendous for him. The worst moment of his life, times 10 billion, for everyone to just consume. I think he just needed that to not be public. Okay, I get that, 100%. But since the trial began, the conspiracy theorists have gone batshit crazy. And they are saying all sorts of things, like this whole he got married 7 days after the murders or the killings. I don't even know how that happened, how people start talking about that. It's garbage. It's not true. And just as an aside here, TMZ had some photos of Patrick and his wife in New York. I guess someone surreptitiously photographed them in a private moment. Not sexual, but just, they were just sitting. And that's unfair. That's unfair. We for God's sake, guy's a victim. The guy is a victim. I hope that he can find another life like Dr. Pettit did after his wife and 2 girls were murdered. I hope he can find some semblance of happy. He'll never be the same. But for those of you who are suggesting that he did something in this terrible tragedy, that he somehow did the killings, come on, get your head out of your ass and stop. Just stop. He didn't. The evidence proves he was elsewhere. and the guttural sounds of him discovering his children and his wife would prove it if it weren't suppressed. And I hope maybe once he realizes just how significant this bullshit hullabaloo is online, he might actually reconsider and allow it to be made public, because I think it'll shut a lot of the naysayers up. I don't know personally, and if you're one of them, I don't mean to be mean, but I have to be a little mean, like, snap out of it. Patrick didn't do this. Patrick tried. Lindsay tried. They all tried. Did they do a perfect job? No, but I mean, perfect? Really? Honestly? Perfect? Yeah. Could we have done more? Yeah. Could they have done more? Yeah. Again, life isn't perfect. It's messy. And this is a great example of how we need to understand it's important. Don't brush this shit off. It's important. And when there are children at home, it is even more important. And let me clear up a couple of things, just, pro forma shit that happens in court all the time, because I've been going into courtrooms for 38 years now and reporting. So court ended early today, and everybody's thinking, whoa, something big is happening. No, it's scheduling issues. Happens all the time. So normal, I don't even take note. So wipe that off your conspiracy plate. Second thing is that the judge had some questions for jurors today.
Has any member of the jury read, seen, heard, or overheard anything from any source about any aspect of this case that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial as a juror? Next, is there any other serious matter or concern bearing on your service as a juror that anybody needs to bring to my attention at this time?
But it's not weird, because there was a sea of women wearing pink outside and chanting and singing. He might want to ask them if they saw it. Or he might want to just say, just please disregard that. In any high-level or high-profile court case, there's going to be stuff outside. Remember in Karen Reed, it was litigated where the protesters could stand, and then even that was, reversed. People were loud, and jurors see everything, right? They have to come into court. George Floyd, they had to come into court by all the protesters, even though they were fenced off. So sometimes the judge just wants to check in with the jury and just let them know what's what. So that conspiracy theory, wash that out of your hair. Yeah. And then the next thing is, a lot of people online are saying, ooh, I think that Lindsay Clancy's defense attorney, Kevin Reddington, is going to go scorched earth in his closings, and he's going to pin the whole damn thing on Patrick. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I really don't think that's going to happen, y'all. No. Patrick is in Lindsay's corner. So that should tell you a lot about this case. If a dad loses his 3 children to a violent, awful murder, that dad typically wants to kill the killer with his bare hands. That's what my experience has shown. And yet, this dad has enveloped the killer with support. Divorced her, yes. Found another wife, yes. Moved on, yes. But supports her. Does not want to see her found guilty, locked away forever, executed. Doesn't happen in Massachusetts, but you know what I'm saying? It is a big thing when you have a Rusty Yates supporting Andrea Yates after his 5 children were murdered at her hands. Same thing here with Lindsay Clancy and Patrick Clancy. So no, I do not think that Kevin Reddington is going to pin this on Patrick Clancy in closings. So just a few of my musings. So in any case, many of you will say, if you have followed moment to moment, does the evidence really show a psychosis? Well, she has a mental health expert on the stand that said so, but prosecutors chipped away at him.
At this point, intrusive thoughts continuing regarding voices in her head that she heard constantly.
Yes.
What were these voices saying to her?
They were getting worse, and they were telling her to kill herself.
Did she indicate that she had severe confusion in actually hearing or seeing things that aren't there? In her case, it would not be seeing. That would be visual hallucinations. But did she complain of hearing things that weren't there, hallucinations?
Yes.
Did she complain of thoughts and beliefs that were not within reality and that she was in a disassociated state out of reality?
Yes.
Did she indicate that, did you observe that there were circumstances where she exhibited increased energy, activity, productivity, otherwise known as hypomania?
Yes.
So Can you tell this jury, sir, in your opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty based upon all of what you have reviewed, all of what we have talked about, all of what you have considered, as to whether or not at the time of this incident resulting in the killing of these 3 little kids that she was suffering from a mental disease or defect, such as that she lost substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of her act, or, in the disjunctive, was unable to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law?
Yes.
Tell the jury what your opinion is, please.
My opinion is that she did have indeed a mental disease or defect. That's a legal construct, not a DSM-5 one, but she had bipolar disorder with postpartum psychoses. In addition, she was unable to conform her behaviors to the rule of law, and she had no appreciation for the wrongfulness of her act.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And you indicated that she asked to call her husband, right?
Yes?
Your testimony yesterday was that she had called him to tell him that she loved him and to see where they were at, right?
Yes.
That was your testimony? Meaning what, their relationship?
That I made no interpretation of what that meant. She left the message, and we left it at that.
But in that subsequent conversation that you were a witness to where they were speaking on the phone and she told them about these voices or explained about the voices, did she ask about the kids?
She did not, as I recall.
Now, in all of the times over the course of the last few years that you've met with Miss Clancy, how many times has she told you since the incident that she's heard a voice? Currently.
She has not heard voices since the event took place in 2023.
And you reviewed all the records to know that she did not endorse that she was hearing a voice to any of her providers between September and January 23rd of 2023.
So when someone...
Yes or no, sir?
That's a difficult question to say yes or no from, because sometimes if someone says something that's inaccurate, it's not an affirmatory or a negative response. That's misleading.
My question to you, though, was where in the records from September to January 23rd or 2022 did she tell any of the providers she saw that she heard a voice telling her to kill herself?
It's not in the records.
Prosecutors have some mental health experts who treated her and said, I didn't see psychosis, but her defense attorneys chipped away at them. Like, you saw her on telemed? Did you ever have her in the office? Really? No? So it's the battle of the experts, and it's an insanity case. And most people hate insanity cases. They almost never prevail. Because, I'm not going to lie, most jurors look across the room and they're like, wait a minute, I have to say not guilty? And they said they did it? And they're just telling us they're crazy and they're going to walk out the door and kill someone else? That's what most jurors will do. But the truth is, these people don't walk out the courtroom door. They go straight, if they prevail, if they're not guilty by reason of insanity, they go right into an institution. And in the case of Andrea Yates, a quarter century later, she's still there. In the case of many people, decades and decades, they're still there. The attempted assassin of President Reagan was in for decades and decades. And the pitched battle about getting visitation with his family, etc. I mean, it went on and on. They don't walk out the back door. Can they walk out one day? Absolutely. When they're well. Who determines that? Doctors. Doctors have to give the check and say, you know what? This person's not a danger to him, herself, or others. And it's time to reintegrate back into society. Can it be a week? I guess. Is it usually? No. Can it be a year? Sure. Could Lindsay Clancy walk out of that courtroom into an institution and months or maybe a year later walk out and have a normal life, get married, have more kids? Yes. I think that's what's hard. I think that is what drives people bananas. How can you put exercise bands around your own 3 children's necks and snuff the life out of them while sending their dad on an errand? And then, a couple years later, start having a normal life again. Normal, things considered. Okay, she's paralyzed. She threw herself out of a window in an attempt to take her own life. She cut her own wrists, her neck, etc. Lots of debate over that. I'm not getting into that. I'm not litigating. Not going to do it. I just want us to think about some separate but equal cases, because I have been very vocal about postpartum issues, postpartum illnesses, postpartum psychosis, how hell yes, you can come in and out of postpartum psychosis and present normally and then not. And then present normally again. Because a lot of people say, well, what the hell? Lindsay Clancy was methodical. She was clear-headed. She was a great mom. And then Shazam kills her 3 kids. And what? She's in psychosis? How does that happen? And the truth is it can. So, just the meds here. I'm not opining. It's just the medicine. And the doctors, they say that is how it works. Is it rare that late into having your child, 8 months, in the case of little Callan? Yeah, it's rare. Usually the postpartum psychosis happens earlier, like in the first few weeks, months. Can it happen later? Yeah. Turns out, yeah. Again, it's not me. It's the doctors. They're the ones I'm conferring with. They're the ones I've asked these questions to because I want to know. Here I am. I've had 2 kids, raised them. I had all my problems. I've had friends with lots of problems, many who have reached out to me during this case because they've seen my podcast and said, hey, I need to tell you a few things about my pregnancy and how many doctors I had to see and how they wanted to medicate the F out of me. And it just wasn't working. Okay, so lots of people have come out of the woodwork to talk about this because most people don't talk about it in open society. Apparently we're okay talking about cancer, but not mental illness, especially postpartum mental illness, right? So I've been very, very vocal and supportive of the notion that it is real, it exists. Get your head out of the 2000s or the 60s with the baby blues bullshit. That's not what it is. Far more serious. It's offensive to say baby blues. Come on. But I will also say there's another side of this coin, and many of you have brought forth a very robust argument. How about this? Let's go back to Travis Decker. Do you remember him? Yeah, I know. He sounds familiar. What? Who is that guy? And don't take my word for it. If you're the jury, how about take the word of one of the witnesses, okay? But I will also note this, that when that witness had given that very powerful testimony on behalf of Lindsay Clancy, well, there's always cross-examination, and ain't that a bitch. Prosecutors stood up and said, basically, you treated her after the fact, not before the fact, right? And it's fine and dandy that you're up there on the stand saying that Lindsay Clancy heard male voices telling her to kill her children, but she didn't tell you that. She didn't tell you that. A chaplain who she spoke with after the murders told you that. So it's kind of like a share and share alike conversation, right? So those are important points. Does the psychotic patient need to be so clear and convincing of all of the legal elements that are afflicting her in order to convince the jury that she was insane at the time of those murders? No, I don't know. It's up to them. It's tricky though, right? It's tricky. They've got to be able to assess exactly what happened during the murders, not 20 minutes before or 20 minutes after or 50 days after or 50 days before. It's got to be during the time of the actual killings, right? And I got to be careful not calling them murders because effectively, if you're not guilty by reason of insanity, those are killings, not murders. If you're guilty, then they're murders. You know that smell when somebody walks past you and you immediately want to know what perfume they're wearing? That is what laundry sauce does to your clothes. I've been using the new limited edition Brazilian Vanilla. And when I open the dryer, everything smells warm and expensive and yummy. These are fine fragrances created by top perfumers. So there's none of that harsh chemical detergent smell, Plus, the laundry pods are pre-measured, so you just toss one in, and the bioenzymes do all of the dirty work for you. And for a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off their entire order when you use the code Banfield at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off at laundrysauce.com when you use the promo code Banfield. And when they ask you where you heard about them, please tell them we sent you. It is time to make Laundry Day the best day of the week. So, okay. I'm going off on a big tangent here, but what I want to do is bring us all back to separate, but maybe not equal cases, different cases that had us all losing our ever-loving minds, but not in the same way we're losing our minds over Lindsay Clancy. I mean, did you see some of the video from today? I'm recording this on Thursday, August 20th. I love how I always have to check the date. I'm that lost. There was a sea of support outside of Lindsay's trial. Women wearing pink in support of Lindsay Clancy, and maybe more in support of the cause, right? Postpartum depression, psychosis, the whole battery of mental illnesses that associate with postpartum. They were there. They were there outside the courthouse to support her. Lots of people support her. In fact, this is known as the saddest trial in America. Saddest? Well, all trials are sad. Somebody died, families left behind. But this one has such sad elements. A husband who was sent away on errands while his wife and the mother of his children was killing all three of them. Under the age of 5. Little babies that look to their mother as the number one protector. Cannot imagine what they went through in that basement. And that's important, right? What the kids went through. So the people who are not wearing pink and not supporting Lindsay Clancy and really not up for any of this, they point to, look, how about Travis Decker? How about Travis Decker? Remember him? Yeah, no, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? He had 3 daughters. Peyton, she was 9. Evelyn, she was 8. And Olivia was 5. Travis and his wife split. They had a parenting agreement whereby they shared the kids, and he came to pick the kids up, and he took the kids, and his wife had been concerned about his mental state. He had PTSD. He was a veteran, but not to the extent that she wouldn't give him the kids. And then he didn't return the kids. They were supposed to be returned, and she got scared. And that mom called in the authorities, like right away. This happened in 2025. Washington State. Massive manhunt. Trying to find the girls. Trying to find Travis Decker. They found the girls. They did not find Travis. They found the girls within days. And look, if you get triggered by this stuff, turn the volume down right now because this is hard. Those little girls, oh God, were found with plastic bags over their heads, and their wrists were zip tied. God, like again, they're looking at their dad, the person in their life they trust the most, and he's bound their hands, and he suffocated them. I don't know if he stuck around for it. I don't know if he had the courage or the mental acuity or ability, whatever you want to call it, to stay there and watch his work. I don't know that because he took off. Gone. There was a little bit of blood found on his vehicle where they found the girls, but couldn't find Travis, you know? It took months and months and months. And they finally found Travis. Wasn't alive, took his own life. He was in the woods. He actually wasn't far. He was like, I think within about a mile or so of where the murders happened. Again, were they murders? And I asked that because right away we all said they were. Absolutely. He murdered his 3 kids. Is it possible he could have had the same issues as Lindsay Clancy? Not postpartum psychosis, but post-war psychosis, the kind of PTSD that completely alters your ability to appreciate right from wrong or appreciate the nature and consequences of your actions. We can't ask Travis Decker. We can't sit him in a courtroom and pry open his mind best we can to figure out what the hell was going on. We can't do that because he's dead. But we didn't give him that benefit. Most people. I know I didn't. We didn't. We just called him a son of a bitch. a filthy, cowardly murderer who took the lives of 3 beautiful little girls. So if you look at him and you look at Lindsay, was there a big difference? Before the girls disappeared, it was kind of thought there weren't any red flags. I mean, there were flags. They might have been pink, orange, I don't know. They weren't red flags. Mom wasn't terrified to leave him with the kids. There were issues, right? There were issues. Nothing that would indicate this. And the worst thing happened. I have talked at length before about Andrea Yates. I mean, it is the case that launched 1,000 conversations per minute. If you were around 25 years ago, I was on the air on MSNBC broadcasting live when across the wires came Texas mother drowns 5 of her own children under the age of 7. The youngest one, Mary, I think was 8 months. 8 months again. And everybody was gobsmacked. Just, it couldn't be fathomed how this woman could do this. What kind of a woman would do this? And she sat catatonic in court. She went through 2 trials. First one, they convicted her of murder. Second trial, they didn't. And there's a good reason she had 2 trials. There was a bunch of bad stuff that hit the witness stand, big, huge mistakes. And so it was the right thing to do that she got a second trial. And they said not guilty by reason of insanity. She's been locked in an institution ever since. And she does not want to leave. She does not. She is just a shell of a person. So we kind of get the feeling that we probably got it right. Yeah. And now I'm going to go to the other side of the coin. Another mom who murdered 2 of her kids. Ready? I really hope you have a stiff Jack Daniels handy. Lori Vallow. Lori Daybell effing Vallow. Dirtbag. She blew through 5 husbands, and on her 5th, the 2 of them, wacky as all get out, the doomsday people. They were, it's all coming, and only some of us will be saved, and these kids, they're zombies. So when I say whacked out, I mean it. You can believe whatever you want in your religion, but when you think your kids are zombies, you're whacked out. And so Lori had a psychiatric assessment. It revealed that she suffers from, quote, a delusional disorder intertwined with hyper-religiosity and, quote, unspecified personality disorder with narcissistic features. Amen to the narcissistic features. We all knew that from the get-go. But all those other things, pretty interesting. Like really interesting. Now, in Idaho, it should be noted they don't really have the insanity defense like other states do. There's probably some form of diminished capacity. I'd have to read the criminal code, which I'm not going to do right now. But she kind of just argued I didn't do it. Really? Because the evidence, your boyfriend's backyard, the kids are buried. But this is super interesting about Lori Vallow. She was ruled not competent to stand trial. So let me explain real quickly. I know some of you know, but others don't. So let's just hang together for a minute. There's 2 elements of having a lot of problems when it comes to facing a judge. If you can't even get into that courtroom to start the process of being tried, meaning 2 things. You do not understand the charges that you're facing and you cannot help your attorney. That's competence. And lots of people are incompetent to stand trial. Elizabeth Smart, her 2 kidnappers were incompetent for like the better part of a decade. So much litigation over whether they could jab them with drugs to make them competent and all the rest. And finally, they were competent enough to make a plea and stand trial, and that didn't turn out well for them. Although Wanda Barzee is out free. I want to vomit. And the Siders family, the 16 children who were found in a tiny room, barely able to speak. 2 of them were life-flighted and one of them might have died. I mean, that was unbelievable. The 4 adults in that family, the grandparents, the son, and his wife, all have competency issues. All of them. That's not decided yet. We don't know if they're going to end up being competent or incompetent to stand trial, but competency is huge. And with Lori Vallow, she was incompetent. She couldn't even go to trial. So that should tell you something about her mental state. Eventually, she was institutionalized and made competent. And that can happen too. And she ended up standing trial. Big donut. Big fat loss for her. Life, no parole. And then she had other trials for murdering husband and all the rest. So, but should we be thinking a little bit about Lori Vallow and her mental illnesses? Because, dear God, that woman was nuts. You know, like, I think my children are zombies, right? But she was burning through people, burning through a husband, at least one, I think more, burning through kids because, you know, it worked out better for her with her new boyfriend / husband, burning through his former wife, late wife, so that she could be his second wife. So I think there were a lot of elements that came in there that made us realize she was manipulative and horrible and just a terrible person. But we didn't question her much over her capacity to understand right from wrong and understand the nature and consequences of her actions. We didn't. Mostly because the state didn't really have an ability to do that. Do you remember Chad Dorman? There's another famous name, infamous name, back in 2023. Oh, God, this was another awful one. They're all so terrible. But Chad Dorman, he chased his 3 kids and executed them on the front lawn and chased the last one through like a field. He came home a little earlier than usual from work, grabbed a Bible, began walking around his house mumbling, "Chad knows what's right." And moments later, the police said he grabbed a rifle out of his gun safe, loaded it up, and just started shooting his family one by one. Dorman said to the detectives that he shot his sons. "I shot Chase, who's 3, I shot Hunter, who's 4, and I shot Clayton, 7, for God. I did it for God." Chad Dorman did not get a lot of our sympathy, especially that thought about chasing that 3rd child, shooting him in the back. And we didn't talk a lot about his sanity, his capacity to know right from wrong, understand nature and consequences of his actions. He sat there and waited for the police to show up, said, "Yeah, did it. Admitted it. He wasn't running." So to me, that's huge. When you're not running, then you don't think anything's wrong. You don't understand right from wrong. The ones who run and hide almost never can prevail with insanity because they ran. Why'd you run? Why would you run? Was there something wrong about what you did? Something you know right from wrong and you knew it was wrong, so you took off? Well, that proves you knew right from wrong. But Chad Dorman didn't. He just sat there. Andrea Yates just sat there, you know? Which brings me back to Travis Decker. He ran. He ran and he hid. And we couldn't find him for months. I don't know how long he hid for. I don't know how long it took for him to take his life. But he knew enough to run and hide for however long that took. So I think he had no shot at insanity. But was he deeply, deeply afflicted with mental illness? Hell to the yes. Matthew Coleman. Now, this one didn't make as big a headline, but it should have. It was back in August of 2021. It was just outside the Mexican resort town of Rosarito, where he liked to go surfing. And he decided he was going to go surfing. But also, he was going to stab his 2-year-old son and his 10-month-old baby daughter with a fishing spear. Yeah. Mr. Coleman was arrested the very same day, driving across the United States border in his Mercedes Sprinter van. So you took off. You left. He was a surf school owner, followed QAnon, told the FBI agents that his kids were infected with serpent DNA and that he needed to kill them. He said he needed to protect other people from the monsters that his children would become. And when asked if he knew what he did was wrong, Mr. Coleman confessed that he did. But then he said, quote, "But it was the only course of action that would save the world." Crazy, right? Really crazy. But it doesn't rise to the legal definition of insanity because you knew it was wrong. You admitted that you knew it was wrong. Now, maybe the question itself should have been asked differently. If you're trying to save the world, it's right. You're sacrificing the most important things in your life for the greater good, what I'm doing is ultimately right. But you could say, I just asked the question, and he said, yeah, I know it's wrong, but I'm trying to save the world. The but. That's the thing that's hard on Coleman. He's 44, he's still in custody, and he's mired in this legal limbo and yet to be tried for those murders because he's been diagnosed with an unspecified form of schizophrenia and other psychotic disorder. His behavior over the last 4 years has gone between manic and catatonic. The judge determined he was unable to assist in his own defense and therefore, say it with me, incompetent. Incompetent, cannot come into this courtroom, cannot stand trial. Apparently, he won't even speak with doctors and he won't speak with his attorneys. Well, that right there is, you can't assist in your defense. That's the other prong of competency, right? You don't understand these charges and you can't help in your defense. He won't speak with his attorneys. And here's the other thing. He refuses to take any medication. So this, for me, is like the Elizabeth Smart case all over again, in that those awful rapey scumbags who kidnapped her and raped her every day for 9 months, that is not me saying it. Elizabeth said it. She said it every day she was raped by both of them. One holding her down, the other one raping her. They had to force the medications, and it was a pitched litigation battle to force those medications. So there were battles and battles and battles all along the way just to get them into a courtroom, just to get them competent to stand trial. I remember thinking, wow, this is bizarre. I remember another case that I covered. The name slips my mind, but it was a woman who did not like the woman that her son was dating, and I think they had children together, and set fire to the house. And they had an apartment within the house, and there was a family with an apartment on the third floor, and they died. The family on the third floor died, and the woman who set the fire was held for 10 years. 10 years held in pre-trial custody because she wasn't competent to stand trial. Talk about really crazy, locked up without a trial for 10 years in America. It can happen if you're not competent. So while we contemplate Lindsay Clancy and how you might feel about Lindsay Clancy's postpartum illness, whether it rises to the level of psychosis, that can be debated, right? Because some say yes and some say no. I think we need to be honest that it can be psychosis. It might be rare, but she can pop in and out of it. We've learned that. So you have to be open to that, right? Certainly if you're a juror. But while we contemplate our anger or our support for Lindsay Clancy, you got to think about these other cases. You've got to think about Chad Dorman chasing his boys down and shooting them in the back, and how much ire, they got for what they did. Lori Vallow, not an ounce of sympathy, not an ounce of understanding, not an ounce of recognition for the mental health challenges that clearly they all have, right? And when I say challenges, it's a spectrum. Could it be all the way to insane? Maybe. Was it? Don't know. Some tried to get it, some didn't. So we'll never really know if they, reached the bar for legal insanity. But the respect that we all have to give one another for our opinions is where I'm getting to, right? Because people are bitching like hell at each other on the internet. And, nobody really has any patience for the other side on this one. If you support Lindsay Clancy, how could you? She's a baby killer. And I get that, because I just listed out the other ones that I couldn't stand. But if you feel that way, I think you need to really respect those who understand that postpartum mental illness, all the way up to postpartum psychosis, is real and it is possible. And maybe we need to open the aperture a hell of a lot more for all of the cases that we look at. It's okay to dislike these people. It's okay. But it's not okay to ignore, cancer of the mind. If I had cancer and I went into a doctor and they said, just, pray on it, or, just it's in your head. Or, yeah, you'll be fine. It's just you got the blues. No. If I had cancer, I'd expect someone to treat me and not indict me if I began to atrophy. And so I think we need to look at it the same way. It's an illness. It is real. And there are gradations of it from patient to patient. It's not a one size fits all. Okay, so I've gone on and on, but I just had to get a couple things off my chest. And can we all just be a little more kind to each other? A little more grace goes a long way. We all live here together. One big flock. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And remember, truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.